Welcome! Today's video provides a step-by-step tutorial on how to create a beautiful black poinsettia card using the Poinsettia Petals bundle and the Hollow's Night Magic stamp set. This is the first card for my October class series. The second card in this series is a Halloween fold flat box card. For those of you who purchased the kit, take a moment now to make sure you have all the pieces and materials shown here. It should all be in the envelope provided. I've provided this materials list here for anyone else interested in following along for this project. To get us started, I want to show you how easy it is to make a card base using the paper trimmer and scorer. So first, with an 8.5 by 11 sheet, I'm scoring at 4 1/4, just straight down the middle. And now I rotated the paper, and I'm cutting it now at 5 1/2. Now I have two card bases. A tip I learned is that if you fold it in half and realize one edge is longer, I put the longer edge on the bottom, push it up against the edge of this paper trimmer, and then use my bone folder to smooth it out. All right, to get started assembling our card, I'm going to start with a thicker cardstock, the thick Whisper White. And I like to use the thicker cardstock when I use the embossing folders. This is often because it will leave a deeper impression and avoid any tearing from my experience. So now we're going to use a sponge dauber and my dye ink in Rich Razzleberry and start smushing around the ink in no specific format here. I'm actually not even concerned about blending really well. I really want this to be more abstract. And now as I'm done with this first layer of ink, I'm going to run it through my die cut and embossing machine. For this, I actually want the spider web impression to be raised for this next step of ink blending that I'm doing. I love the detail in these embossing folders, the 3D embossing folders. So now I'm using that sponge dauber again, and you can see now as I'm applying ink, I'm getting a different look because I'm applying it to the raised edges of the spider webs. Now before I glue this down to my black cardstock, I'm cutting a piece of the metallic mesh ribbon, and I cut it in half for this class, but there's a lot of different ways to apply the ribbon. You can tie a bow. I'm using glue dots to adhere it down. You can use tape behind it, double-sided tape, tape runner. And here's our stamp and seal, the tape runner. This is a super useful tool for applying double-sided tape. We also have tear tape available. Always make sure that your card is oriented in the correct way. You want to make sure that the inked area is at the top of the card. This is going to be behind the black poinsettia. So now I'm using a piece of pumpkin pie, scrap piece, and running it through the die cut machine using this beautiful sprig from the Poinsettia Petals bundle. The other color is Rich Razzleberry. And these are going to get glued on top of the ribbon and behind the poinsettia. So now I'm showing you guys the black poinsettia, how I created it using scrap paper. This die actually has two pieces, one for embossing and one for cutting. The outline is awesome because you can stamp the poinsettia and then die cut around it. But what I did here, and you see all this blue painter's tape, when I prepare my class kits, I like to keep it together versus having to reorient the different petals. What I'm showing you now is when I die cut using just a basic sandwich, it actually has a very shallow impression. So I'm going to zoom in here. You can see the leaves, the leaf impressions, a little bit. I'm now going to create a sandwich for my die cutting machine with the magnetic plate and the silicone mat. And as I push that through, I'll show you that the impression's a lot deeper. And I actually love this look. So you can see it's a little bit more prominent using that silicone mat. Most of your die cutting and embossing machines should come with this mat or have it as an option to purchase. So next here, we're going to assemble our flower. And to start, we're going to shape the petals. This is totally optional for those of you guys following along with my class kit. You guys can glue the different layers of the petals together without shaping the petals, but I'm just taking my finger here along that middle line of each petal and then folding the outer edges of the leaves or the petals up. It just gives it a fun dimension. Okay, I did this to all of the leaves. And there you can see I'm just overlapping the petals. And I've also prepared this little centerpiece, the flower center. I used Rich Razzleberry and basic black. I'm using a glue dot to apply it to the smaller set of petals. And I provided you all with one black dimensional, a little hexagon foam dimensional. You apply that to the back of the small petals, remove the backing, and then lay it on top of the bigger petals. Now you're going to want to adhere the whole flower to the card, but before you do, make sure that you've glued down your sprigs. And I absolutely apologize for not zooming back in to refocus. It'll focus again here pretty soon. Now I'm going to show you the stamping that I've done for this card. And this sentiment came from the Poinsettia Petals stamp set. I haven't stamped a lot with this set yet, but I'm excited to play around with coloring in the petals and using some chrome colors like silvers and gold embossing powders. It's a really beautiful set. So I'm laying my photopolymer stamp face down onto the table, and then I pick it up with the stamp block. And now I'm applying the Rich Razzleberry purple ink, or maybe this is more of a violet color. And I stamp it down. I love the see-through blocks. You stamp it down, apply a little bit of pressure, and once you lift it up, you'll see a nice, crisp, clear impression. I love that this sentiment coordinates with the Hollow's Night Magic sentiment that I use for this label. I'll show you guys that in just a little bit. All right, but now to stamp our label. These are the red rubber stamps. Cling stamps is another name for them. I picked it up, try to make sure that it's as straight as can be. I'm using the Rich Razzleberry again. I feel for the cling red rubber stamps that I don't have to apply nearly as much pressure to get a nice clean impression. I feel like if I press too hard, sometimes the thin lines get much thicker and some of the ink bleeds a little bit. So with these, you remember you don't need to press very hard. I used the basic black or the tuxedo black Memento ink for the spider. And I actually used the back of my sentiment piece as scrap paper instead of grabbing an extra scrap paper. Now I'm using the foam dimensionals. I gave 2 in my class kit. Remove the backing. And you're going to apply this in the center bottom of your card. Everything that I've shown you today for placement is just a suggestion. Feel free to make this card your own. If you want to place your sprigs in different places, if you want to use your ribbon differently, please feel free to. And now I'm using the Stampin' Seal to apply the greeting sentiment on the inside. And there's our finished card. Here's one other variation I made of this card in which I used the 3rd layer of petals for the poinsettia, and instead of the paper flower center, I used some rhinestones. Thank you so much for joining me today, and if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. See you next time.